Welcome to our next Driving Matters Vodcast series, produced by the Traffic Injury Research Foundation in partnership with Labatt. We all want our family and friends to come home safely every day, so we're discussing typical, risky situations we have all seen or encountered on the road. And we're also sharing tips to avoid risk and ways to positively influence the behavior of those around us. It features a variety of guests who are making roads safer in their communities and workplaces. We're tackling top risks, including speed, distraction, and impairment. We break down the science to explain how our choices every day can create risk for ourselves and others, meaning some people might not make it home. If you've never been involved in a collision, you might assume it's because you're doing everything right. But the truth is, the unexpected happens on the road every day, and the difference between a near miss and a collision is measured in millimeters and milliseconds. So if you're not prepared or simply fail to recognize the hazard in time, what could have been a near miss becomes a collision. So let's talk about why driving matters. Welcome to our Driving Matters 2.0 podcast series produced by the Traffic Injury Research Foundation in partnership with Labatt. So for many of us, some part of our job involves driving. Some of you may be professional truck drivers, some of you may work in real estate or healthcare and sales and drive to a variety of different locations. And some of you may just commute back and forth to the office and maybe never really thought about driving as being part of work. So today we're talking about employers and their role in the safety equation when it comes to driving in the workplace, and also ways to influence safer choices among employees on the road. So I'm Robin, and joining me today is my co-host Karen and her daughter Kylie. And I'm also very pleased to have Mario De Silva, who is Corporate Risk, Safety and Security Manager with Manitoulin Group of Companies. So welcome, Mario.
Thanks for joining us, Mario.
Nice seeing you guys again.
So motor vehicle collisions are a leading cause of traumatic workplace deaths in transportation, construction, and healthcare industries. And fatalities and serious injuries are a significant impact on employer, and businesses are adversely affected by the resulting economic losses associated with employee absenteeism due to injuries, as well as damaged good and equipment. According to WorkSafe BC, between 2012 and 2016, 33% of traumatic workplace deaths were in motor vehicle collisions. So that's 1 in 3 deaths among employees. There were more than 300,000 work days lost, with claims totaling more than $185 million. There were also 21 workers killed and more than 1,300 injured and or absent from work each year due to work-related crashes. Looking across other provinces, we see similar statistics out of Ontario, with almost 2 in 5 people killed in traumatic workplace incidents in 2017 being killed in motor vehicle collisions, according to the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board in Ontario. In Saskatchewan, 1 in 3 persons killed in traumatic workplace incidents in 2018 were killed in motor vehicle collisions. And according to Manitoba, 21% were a result of motor vehicle incidents. Across the country, we see that employees are adversely affected in road crashes, meaning employers are also adversely affected in road crashes. So today, that's what we're going to be talking about, is how do we keep our employees safe on the road?
So Mario, you've worked in this industry for a really long time, obviously very familiar with the safety practices that are in place and why they're in place. But maybe can you talk about those standards a bit and what makes them so important in your industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Safety standards, right from the hiring point of hiring new drivers and throughout their whole career, is important for training. It's important that we put in the right drivers in the seat, confirming, ensuring that they're being trained, followed up, reviews, constant reviews of their training habits, distracted driving, training. So it's nonstop. Once you're done that hiring process, it doesn't mean training stops there. It's continuing training with those drivers, ensuring that they're safe and ensuring that they're maintaining a safe work habit. And that goes through looking at their annual driver abstracts or semi-annual driver abstracts, confirming if they get tickets, bringing them in, having those reviews process done, and doing follow-up road tests and evaluations with them to ensure that they are safe drivers.
One of the evolutions I've heard about recently, and I don't know because I'm not in your industry, but is the rise of mentorship between drivers. So the more experienced drivers are starting to weigh in and help out those new and upcoming drivers, and say people closer to Kylie's age that might be interested in getting into the industry, learning from those people who've been there, done that, and know how to make sure they get home safe at the end of the day. Is that something that's fairly new, or has that been around for a while?
That has been around for a while. Even with my prior employer that I was there for 23 years, we had a mentorship program where new drivers would match up to more senior drivers. So if it's a new driver has a question, they can call their mentor up for some directions, some assistance. Here at Manitoulin, we have a coaching program where we'll match up some we'll call them OJT drivers, on the job training, and then we would match them up with a coach, and they would provide that training session. But even then, we have driver trainers that are made available to these drivers, all drivers, so if they have a question on driving or TDG, transporting dangerous goods, or anything load securement, they have that reference that they could use to get their questions answered.
Mario, sometimes you see news reports in terms of collisions. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the costs to employers with respect to collisions, and how broadly that affects their business when employees are injured on the job in a road crash.
There's a big impact to that. You got the physical damage, you got the public image of the transportation. So you got this huge crash, and it may not be the carrier's fault, but what you see is the truck and the carrier's name on that side, especially on that big 53-foot trailer. It's a big bulletin board. So that has a negative impact. But you're looking at the driver injuries, workman's comp injury costs are high. You look at your equipment damages, and today equipment parts are getting very hard to get in. Trucks are down for an extended period of time because of lack of parts. So today there's even a more impact. And then you look at your costs. You look at your insurance premium. We've all heard about the hard market. Insurance costs are going up like crazy. So it's best to avoid that collision through proper training. And sometimes things are out of your control, and the third party is the ones that causes it, but you still get those costs affected, especially in certain jurisdictions in Canada that are considered no faults provinces.
Right, and I think with respect to collisions, you raise an important point that there's often an assumption, that the larger vehicle is at fault, and we know in many instances that that's actually not true. And in Ontario, as well as a number of other jurisdictions across the country, there have been tremendous efforts to raise safety standards for drivers in the trucking industry, really to prevent collisions and to keep those workplaces safe, because at the end of the day, they're out on the road at least twice as much, I think, as passenger vehicle drivers in an average year. Can you talk a little bit about some of the latest work that's been done around improving safety training for drivers coming on the job?
Some of the things that has been done is the whole MELT program that different provinces are introducing, which requires drivers to maintain a certain level of education program. Ontario is 103 hours, 103.5. Other provinces are like 120 hours. Ontario was the first province to introduce that back in 2017, and some of the other provinces have followed suit. There are still some others that have not, but I can see that changing over the next little while. So that's been one of the biggest change with the training requirements within Canada. I haven't seen too much going on in the US so far, but I can see that being that coming down the pipe. And then companies themselves they're going beyond that MELT standard. They want to bring their drivers in and have the in-driving coach program, the in-house training program. A lot of individual companies are going beyond that MELT requirement to get their drivers up to par, because they know the importance of avoiding collisions, workplace safety, injuries, so that way they keep that truck moving and keep that driver going.
What about those truck drivers who've already done all the training and are themselves can be a coach? How do you keep up that knowledge? Because I'm sure there's more stuff that comes out. Is there a consistent test, or they have to go over to make sure all their knowledge is still intact?
Even as driver coaches, they're still required to complete an annual review with our driver trainers. They're still required to complete a road evaluation. We require all our drivers to complete 2 annual reviews or training sessions. One of them is the winter, and it just doesn't deal with winter concerns, but we also add stuff with 3-point contact to avoid slip, trips, and falls. We add stuff with fatigue, distracted driving. We also introduced another session in the spring and summer that deals with those risks. Summertime campers going out with their RVs, or there's risk there, and how do you operate around a truck, or what drivers should be doing when they are operating around RVs, right? You get these mom and pops who are going down the street with their canoes on top of their RVs that are unsecured or cutting in, so we always tell our drivers, you got to leave that extra safe distance for that unexpected.
Mario, you and Manitoulin and a number of other trucking industry representatives worked with TIRF on our Canadian Coalition for Distracted Driving and helped develop a business case for employers. And one of the takeaways for me was what was so impressive about the industry that you work in is the speed with which they adapt training and they implement new measures really focused on keeping drivers safe. And I was thinking if we could harness that momentum for all employers to focus on safe driving, it would really help us in terms of reducing road crashes. We've talked a lot about education and training and the work that goes into preparing drivers for the road, but there are other types of tools and strategies that you use with respect to technology, which I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about how technology has helped prevent and reduce crashes and keep employees safe and the return on investment for some of that technology.
Yeah, it's incredible. Our trucks today, compared to when I first started the industry back in '95, they're running computers. The telematics, the reports that we're able to obtain, hard braking, speed control, the cameras, you name it, it's there. And we can run reports like, for example, we have a report that comes out every weekend on driver speed. And those drivers who show up on those reports are dealt with, they're brought in, they're reviewed, and we can actually drill into exactly where they were speeding. So the driver says, I don't know what you're talking about, we can pinpoint right on Google Maps or whatever it's called and said, this is exactly where you're speeding. And they're like, oh yeah, there's a bit of a hill going down there. Well, okay, let's step back. You know that there's a hill, so you need to start slowing down to maintain that speed. Hard braking, we're able to see those reports. Lane departure systems where the driver is going off to the one side, they get a warning and we get those reports. In the event of a serious collision, we're able to download those events to see what that driver was doing. And bring the driver in to see what he could have done differently, what he should have done. There's tons of technology, ton of information that we gather on those reports to help us.
I would imagine that maybe some of the perception about that kind of technology might be that it's for punitive measures and it's to kind of bring down the hammer on these driving behaviors. But what I'm hearing you saying is that this is all about coaching. This is about actually working with the drivers to identify these areas where, like you said, the one driver, okay, well, there's a hill there. Okay, well, here's how you prepare knowing that there's a hill there. So I'm hearing this is a lot more about working with the drivers.
Yeah, it's a balance. It's definitely working with the drivers and educating with those drivers. But, if you have a driver who's continually showing up on your reports, you need to start following on that progressive disciplinary policy as well. But the ideal is to coach, train the drivers, educate the drivers, and make them that better driver. As well as enforcing your company policies to ensure that you have safe drivers.
So what I'm hearing you say then is really the investment in safety and the preventative measures with respect to education and training, as well as some of the technologies, really have a strong return on investment in terms of avoiding collisions and preventing crashes.
I agree. There's definitely a great investment there and return on investment there. But, for those carriers that have this technology, it's important that you embrace it, because if you don't, and it did have a collision, you're actually opening yourselves up to more litigation because you're not using that technology to help prevent those collisions. I would have to admit, 25 years ago, I was hesitant in those dash cams, but today, Absolutely, they're a must. They definitely help employers or trucking companies or busing companies, even if it means that it shows that your driver was at fault. Well, you know what? It's better to know now and try to resolve those issues than going up to court and wasting all that time litigation costs. That's something that you could have resolved a lot earlier and stuff. And it's a great training tool. Absolutely.
One of the other things that I thought was really interesting with the trucking industry that I think all employers could really benefit from is the focus is not just on the driver and keeping the driver safe, but also extending that education to the family around safe driving, to young drivers, and to the community.
I agree. I think definitely you need to get the community involved, even your customers involved with regards to safe driving. We participate with different events with our customers that we get invited to make some presentations on safe driving around trucks. And even schools at the high school level, right? Working with different trucking car schools and stuff so they understand there is a different way of driving around trucks, right? Because the trucks, they have such large blind spots that it's important that students, young drivers understand that. So they know exactly what to expect.
Bringing it a bit further back to learning how to drive these trucks, in BC, the program is you start off with an L as you're learning to drive. Once you graduate that, you have an N for 2 years. Do you have to have graduated past your N in order to learn how to drive these trucks, or can you also be a new driver with the N and still learn how to drive these trucks?
You need to have your full class 5, or here in Ontario is a full class G license. So you can't have a graduated license. Once you have that, you can start going into your commercial and start doing your MELT program, doing your written test to get your commercial driver's license. So you can start that. For a lot of carriers that go into the US, it's 21 years of age that you have to be to operate a commercial vehicle in the US. Here in Canada, it's 18. Those are probably the only restrictions, is you need to have your full class G or level 5 license across Canada, and then you can start that process.
That's a really good question. So if there are any up and coming drivers out there who think they might want to get into this trucking industry, that's a really good thing to know.
And reach out to different trucking companies and ask to see what they want to give you a tour, and check out their facilities there. There's different good organizations, the OTA, the Alberta Motor Trucking Association. Reach out to them. I'm sure they're glad to provide you with some information there.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that's a great note to wrap up on. Thanks for joining us, Mario, and talking to us a little bit about workplace safety. And as I said, employers really play an important role within communities to ensure that their employees are safe on the road. And while we may not think about safe driving practices as part of workplace safety programs, there are a lot of benefits for employers to make sure that they're also addressing issues in which employees drive, whether they're professional drivers or just commuting to and from work. An investment by employers in workplace safety and safe driving practices, and encouraging those not just within the workplace, but also within families and within communities, could have a lot of benefits to help us reduce our road crash problem. Also joining us today for this workplace safety episode is Natalie Leberge, who is the Logistics Director for Eastern Canada with Labatt. So thanks very much for joining us, Natalie.
Thanks for having me.
Labatt employs a lot of workers across the country, and with the diverse geography of roads in Canada, there are a lot of different roles and functions at Labatt. So I imagine driving can be an important part of the job of many employees, and they probably use a range of different vehicles, starting with passenger cars all the way up to transport trucks. So can you talk a little bit about how important is safe driving for your employees?
It is so important for Labatt. As a company, we have 200 heavy trucks on the road every day and over 500 passenger commercial vehicles. And the two of them together are traveling over 20 million kilometers per year, and that for Quebec and Ontario only. Very important for us. We have very high safety standards, and our road compliance track record is among the best of the industry. This for sure requires constant training and road safety awareness from our employees. Our employees is a key portion for sure, and the equipment is a key portion too. So our fleet is maintained in pristine condition, and we have a maintenance program, which exceed government standards. We conduct thorough inspection daily that feeds our maintenance team priorities. On the management side, we have a very rigorous routine and also an extensive route planning routine that, combined with strong technology support, really helps us to ensure that our trucks are perfectly balanced and never overweight when they hit the road. Just to give you an example here, like for example, in Quebec, we delivered 25 million cases of beer last year, and we achieved a perfect maintenance record for the distance travel, which is the equivalent of circling the globe 88 times. And if we add Ontario, it's actually 250 times. So we are very proud of this. We also had no mechanical incident nor accident involving or creating injuries over the last 2 years. So to try to make the story short here, no accident causing injury, no vehicle placed out of service due to mechanical default, and no vehicle being overloaded nor improperly balanced. So very pleased about that track record.
That's certainly very impressive. Can you talk a little bit about why Labatt has invested in increasing awareness among employees about road safety risks and encouraging safe practices on the road?
Yes, for sure. It is a very key component about road safety. So our driver participate in yearly training that focuses on defensive, and winter driving. So how to assess their environment, compliance, and the road safety code. We also have weekly safety reminders because safety has to be on our mind at all times. So safety reminders on key topics and key behavior that we are asking our employee to have, and also share best practice for other regions. We also give the feedback using technology to our driver about their driving ability. So we use telemetry that collects data through a GPS, and that is used to train our employee and be more proactive on the different things they could do better. Just a couple examples like G-force around the bend, sudden acceleration, speeding or change of lane. That's all part of information that is provided by our telemetry. We use equipment and technology to support our driver ability. One thing we're doing also from a training part is we have specialized drivers that we call Labatt Pros. So they have more in-depth knowledge, and they actually receive even more in-depth training with external schools every year. And they after that transfer that knowledge to our employees, and they act as mentors to our driver, the new ones, but also the experienced ones. So that's what we do on our employee and driver side, but we also have routines for our managers. So we do have weekly meeting with them where we discuss about driver performance and safety best practice. They also have yearly training where we invite specialists to teach them about safety best practices, technology, and the importance on our corporate reputation and also on our business about exemplary road safety.
Natalie, it sounds like there have been really considerable and ongoing investments from Labatt with respect to safety practices. And I hear you talking about the training programs and the safety programs, as well as the use of technology to provide feedback to drivers, and the use of coaching as well. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other things that Labatt has done in the community with respect to safe roads and safe practices, because I think that the work that you're doing really goes beyond keeping employees safe on the job, but also safe day to day with their families and with their friends and in the communities in which they live.
Yeah, we like to interact with the communities to make our knowledge available, but also share experience with them. So across the country, we hold road safety forums where we partner with municipal, provincial, and federal organizations who are responsible for road safety to broaden the awareness of safety driving. Our employees are also very much involved in those and attend those safety forums. So they're available to our people, but also to the other organizations.
Can you share some information about some of the preventative practices that Labatt has put in place to keep their employees safe when they're on the road?
Yes, sure. In addition, we conduct for sure rigorous maintenance program and pre-departure inspection. One thing that we have that is very useful is those inspections are registered into a mobile app that actually communicates directly to mechanics for repairs. So that allows us to avoid the gap in communication on the repairs required. We also invest into other preventive technologies as rear cameras. So all heavy trucks are fitted with those cameras to facilitate reverse maneuver in restricted space. And in large cities, it's even more important. I think all of us at one point felt that the space was limited when we're driving in big cities. Could you imagine with heavy trucks? The feeling is way worse. So anything we could do to support our driver is actually considered. Attention to details is critical. It is a part of our operation. It has to be embedded into regular routines or they would actually drop. And those two, attention to detail and regular routines, are creating optimal conditions. We already covered the investment in training for employees. One thing maybe I would add to your question is we have full-time dedicated managers to make road safety a priority. So one is actually totally focused on road safety, and the other one is a focus on what can we invest or what are the investments of the future in terms of lead technology. So it has to be a commitment from the organization to make it a priority for sure. Resources is part of it.
When you're mentioning about maneuvering through those restricted areas, I have seen some of those large trucks do those maneuvers, and it is truly awe-inspiring to watch them in action. So clearly what you're doing is working very well.
It's impressive to me. I'm saying to my driver every time I meet with them, like, I wouldn't do that. Like, I have way enough of my car. So I could imagine the level of attention. So we're doing our best to support them, make sure they have the right equipment and reliable equipment. But at the end, they're the one deserving lots of the thank you for our track record.
Absolutely.
So what I'm hearing, Natalie, is that the commitment is there really across the board from an employment perspective in terms of using the technology and providing the training, but also reinforcing it through day-to-day practices and ensuring that the work environment is really designed to influence drivers positively to make the safe choices. And I'm also hearing another important point that you're making with respect to the management and leadership across the board to ensure that that there's coordination from a safety perspective and that the managers are equally invested and attuned to safety as the drivers are. So we often see on the news collisions, significant collisions involving large trucks. And oftentimes it's not the large truck that's at fault in those instances, but can you talk about, from an employer's perspective, what is the impact on companies with respect to those collisions and some of the costs that companies may incur?
Yeah, actually, the biggest impact would actually be people impact. So people health or life is from far the most important thing when we talk to road safety. Would it be from our employees or on other people that would be directly or indirectly impacted into an accident? So number one from far, and that's the one that we never want to go through. In terms of other implication from a business perspective, obviously there is some risk on equipment damages or loss that could affect our customer service. So if we're into the delivery business with heavy trucks, it means that we are serving customer. A second impact that could be there. The third one that could become more severe is if we don't respect road safety and have a good track record, we could be removed the right to own a fleet. So we do have a privilege to own special delivery permits, and we need to earn this privilege every year. And the last one I would put on, you mentioned in your question about TV's reports on accidents. It could affect corporate reputation as well. So, and we know this is a hard one to gain, but so easy one to lose. So I would say those would be my 4 main consequences.
What would you tell other employers about the benefits of investing in road safety strategies for their employees?
My recommendation, or what I would like to share with other employers, is it's all about details and rigor, training and education. It's all about covering the small details, as small details results in big changes in the manner we conduct our business and the manner we take the road in Canada. Frankly, it actually comes down to our employees. Employees is as well our drivers and our managers. Our drivers are actually playing a critical role in our successful safety driving records, and we need to invest in them. At the end of the day, our drivers are the expert, have the driving experience and knowledge to make a difference on the roads in Canada.
Great. Thank you so much for the information, Natalie. I'm very pleased that you were able to join us and share with us some of the experience from Labatt in terms of tackling road safety, not just for employees, but also within communities. So thanks very much for that. And thank you, Mario, as always. Great to see you and great information from you.
Thanks, Mario. Great chatting with you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Bye.
And thank you to Labatt for making this series possible. And please join us again for another episode of Driving Matters 2.0. Thank you for tuning in to our Driving Matters 2.0 Vodcast, produced in partnership with Labatt. TIRF is a registered Canadian charity with a number of free education programs about leading risks on the road, as well as ways to stay safe. They provide access to free fact sheets, infographics, and blogs to download and share. Start a conversation about the reasons you choose to avoid risks on the road. To learn more and access these free resources to support safer roads, visit www.tirf.ca. That's TIRF.ca. Working together, we can all help everyone to get home safe every day.